This is just ridiculous. It's getting towards the end of November, which in the world of NCAA swimming means one thing: mid-season meets. And one of those meets is the Texas Hall of Fame invite, where we saw some insane 500 freestyles. The men's 500 free spent a long time as a somewhat stagnant event. In 2006, Peter Vanderkay set the NCAA record at a 4:08.60, and it then took until 2017, 11 years later, for Clark Smith to just clip it, going a 4:08.42. Zane Grothe made a big move on the American record at the end of 2017, going a 4:07.25, which after over a decade of no one being able to crack 4:08.60 was a very big leap. Kieran Smith would break the next barrier in 2020 at SECs, going a 4:06.32. After all that time, this event was finally moving, but still not super quickly. Behind Smith, others would join the 4:06 club, including Jake McGahee, Matt Sates, as he performed what can be best described as an any percent speed run of an NCAA career, and Luke Hobson. But of course, last year when Hobson went his 4:06, there was another swimmer in front of him, someone who would completely shatter Kieran Smith's 4-year-old record, as Leon Marchand went a 4:02.31 to completely blow the lid off of this event. After Marchand completely redefined what was possible in this event, I personally was very curious to see if we would soon see a flood of really fast times follow that groundbreaking swim. This isn't uncommon whenever someone sets a new ridiculous standard in an event. Even if no one comes and breaks their record, a lot of the time the world will catch up pretty quickly, and suddenly it's a lot closer than it once was. It's not always, but it's certainly not never. Before the first final session of the Texas Invite, pro swimmer Carson Foster time trialed the 500 free, where he set a new American record of 4:05.81. So there's my answer, right? Marchand sets the record at something completely insane, and then the next year Foster begins the process of slowly dragging that second fastest time closer and closer. So then why isn't this video almost done? Because when the actual meet started, sophomore transfer Rex Maurer completely let it rip in this event, blasting a 4:04.45 to soar by Foster by over a second, and is now within almost 2 seconds of Marchand's record. Which, yes, may sound like it's still not even close, but before that day started, Marchand had an over 4-second lead over the second fastest performer. Marchand and Maurer swam their races basically about as differently as you can possibly get. Marchand was out blisteringly fast. He was 21:09 to the 50, 44:62 to the 100, and 1:33.12 to the 200. Maurer, meanwhile, was out much more conservatively and then dropped a massive back half. In fact, he almost even split the race. He was out in a 2:02.08 and back in a 2:02.37. That closing speed was punctuated with a 47.86 on the final 100, with a blazing 23.45 on that final 50. This marks an absolutely massive personal best for Maurer, and really makes me wonder what he's going to get done at the end of the year. Maurer spent his freshman year last season with the Stanford Cardinal. He was a highly sought after recruit coming out of high school, boasting a personal best of 4:12.70. During his time at Stanford, he posted a solid improvement with a 4:11.88, also at the Texas Invite, which would stand as his personal best for the rest of the season. Rex Maurer would then transfer to the University of Texas for his sophomore year after Bob Bowman, the man that coached Leon Marchand to that 4:02, took over the head coaching role there. Maurer was an incredible fit for Texas right away. He even set a new personal best in a dual meet with Indiana at 4:11.20. And now, of course, he's all the way down to that 4:04.45, over 7 seconds faster than he was last year. If we look at Maurer splits compared to Foster, we can see that these two training partners have incredibly similar race plans for most of the race. Foster was out a bit faster than Maurer and held on to that lead through the first 400 yards. The biggest gap between these two swimmers during this phase of the race was at the 200 mark, which was just 22/100ths. And then Maurer turned on the jets during that final 100 and would have left Foster in the dust if they actually got a race side by side. Bob Bowman has now coached the 3 fastest swimmers in the history of this event, and it also does really seem like this event is filling in the massive gap that Marchand opened up last year, and a bit faster than I was personally expecting. Let's also not entirely forget about the 4th place finisher at this Texas Invite, Luke Hobson, who was last year's NCAA runner-up and one of the 4:06 swimmers I mentioned earlier. While Hobson swimming a 4:12 when his personal best in the event is a 4:06 might seem a little dicey at first glance, it's important to remember that Hobson was actually a 4:15 at this meet last year, so he's probably probably going to be a lot faster in March. What times do you think Hobson and Maurer will go in this event at the end of the year? And do you think there's room for Maurer to drop even more time and start to challenge for 2:31? Or is it the case that Marchand's record is just too ridiculous? Let me know down below.